When I started this company, I thought that every person who does woodwork is just a carpenter or a fundi, as we call them. But later I've come to realize, or rather soon, no sooner had I started than I realized that there's a specific person who does joinery, and that person is called a wood joiner. So we're going to be talking about joinery. And joinery is basically joining pieces of wood together. So we've prepared the wood. We've cut it in small pieces. How do we make it into this complex item? How do we make it into a dining chair? How do we make it into an accent chair? This is done by a joiner, and this is done by joining pieces of wood together. There are very many different ways of joining woods. There's very many different types of joints. There's the butt joint, there's the box joint, we have the dowel joint, we have the mortise and tenon joint, we have the dovetail joint, we have biscuit joints, we have half lap joint, we have frame and panel joint, we have mitre joint, and so many other types of joints. So how you choose the joinery, or rather the kind of joint that you're going to use, is highly dependent on the function of the furniture. If you're making something that is going to be heavily moved from one place to another, if you're making something that is going to be carrying a lot of weight, then your joinery has to be really, really good. The other thing that helps us to choose the joints that we're going to use is the nature of the material. If you're using wood and maybe steel and you need to join them together, if you're just using, depends with the kind of wood that you're using. It depends with the strength, what strength you want this joinery to have, and the appearance, because joints cannot necessarily be invisible. They will be visible. The other thing that helps us determine the joint that we want is, of course, the availability of of the equipment that we have, and also the level of the skill that the joiner has. To fasten these joints, we use glues, we use screws, and we use different kinds of glue depending on where the furniture is going to be used. If this is an outdoor furniture, the kind of glue that we have to use has to be something that is waterproof joint, because then we can't have furniture that is being rained on and the glue is losing its strength. If it's an indoor joint, we are going to be using a specific kind of glue. So we use glues, we use screws, and sometimes we might have to hold together the pieces of wood and tighten them with something we call a cargo belt and give it time to dry. The drying time sometimes can take any time between 30 minutes all the way to like 24 hours, depending on what it is that you're making, and depending on the kind of glue that you're using. Of course, depending, with the joint that you have used, only a magician can make a joint disappear or invisible, but we try our very best to make it seamless, to make our joints very seamless. And the only way to do this is to sand it properly so there's a lot of smooth transitions. We fill in with wood filler to make sure that there are no gaps, no visible gaps. We give generous varnishing and generous wood sealer, just so that there's a lot of smoothness and to make it as seamless as possible. The process of wood joinery or joining of pieces can take any time from 2 days to 7 days, depending on the piece of furniture that you're using. If you're making like something like maybe a double-decker bed, it's gonna take longer than someone who is just joining a dining table. So it depends with what it is that you are making. Joinery is everything in woodwork.